So we discussed last week that even though the Almighty created the world through the Shem Havaya, the name, the tetragrammaton name, the name of Havaya, in other words, the essential energy comes from what's called the Or Ein Sof, which is expressed through the name Havaya, the name Hashem. However, the practical and actual creation comes from the name Elokim, as it says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. Elokim created the heaven and earth, which means that Elokim is the name that filters the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light that would allow for physical manifestation, for physical creation. That the light of the Or Ein Sof, of the infinite light, will not blind us to the extent we will not exist as a physical entity, for the Almighty desires that there will be a physical world that will serve Him, as we have explained the purposes of that in different shiurim. And one of the shiurim will be the 4 reasons of creation, which we will do at a separate time. And we will speak about that, the purpose of creation, at length during that shiur. And although the Almighty, so to speak, utilizes the name Elokim as a filter, or the nature, the laws of nature as a filter that allows us to exist seemingly, or feel or think that we are a separate entity, and that there is concealment of godliness, nonetheless, for those who are discerning, for those who are wise, will see the divine hand in every single thing in the world. What's called Hashgaha Pratit, the divine overseeing of everything, or as is many times translated, divine providence. Divine providence. Everything is by providence, which means that it's Hashem oversees everything, and on a deeper level, not only Hashem oversees everything, not as a separate entity, but rather everything exists within Himself. And just like you know yourself, you know your finger, you know your hand, so too I know Hashem knows Himself, as Maimonides writes, and by knowing Himself, He knows the whole world, because everything comes from Him. So despite the fact that God is hidden, for the reasons that we discussed before, nonetheless God could be recognized, felt, and seen, so to speak, in one mind's eye, if one wants to. And this is what we said in the beginning. We quoted the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, Kol ha'ma'arich be'ehad ma'arichin lo yamav u'shnotav. He who extends the Ehad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, Ehad. So we said, whoever extends the one, they extend his years and his days and his years. What does it mean, extend the one? So we asked the question, does it mean in pronunciation? And we came to the conclusion, no. Cannot be in pronunciation. It means in itbonenut, in our meditation, in our thought process. Which means to say that everything in the world that we see and that we interact with, we must comprehend the oneness of God, how everything is included in the oneness of God. Nothing is separate from God. Nothing can harm us or do us good or bad. Nothing can affect us in any way, shape, or form. There's no other entity but God, and everything comes from God. And this is something that we must ponder and think every step that we take. Both as far as every step or energy that emits from me, comes from God, and is not separate from God. Even the very energy that would allow me, God forbid, to transgress if I so choose, because God gave me free choice, is also God given at that very moment. Which means that God enlivens me even at the time, God forbid, if I, God forbid, choose to transgress. At the very moment that I'm doing against God's will, God forbid, it's still God's energy that is enlivening me, and I don't exist without Him and outside of Him. And equally from outside of us, meaning to say that everything in the world exists from God, and all of the influences, nothing influences me or affects me in any way, shape, or form without God, which gives us a certain level of equilibrium and harmony when we live in this world. We don't get upset. Why did I do this? I shouldn't have done this and that. The only thing that we could choose freely is to do the will of God. Everything else is by divine design. And you can see it. If you look carefully, you see the divine will. And as he says over here on page 205, about 6 lines from the top. Ki hu yitbarach hu zanu mefanes lakol. For the Almighty, He's the one that sustains all. As it says, Enechol elecha yesaber, all eyes look towards you. V'ata noten lahem et ochelam be'ito, and you give them their food in their right time. Which means that we can see the divine hand in everything. Shel ma'achal kifi sheukzav b'hashgaha elyona, everybody's sustenance has been preordained from God. It doesn't mean to say that we can't pray and change it. We can. But without that, barring that, it has been preordained. And the Almighty decides that. A person can see this tangibly. That a person sees that all of his efforts in business not always necessarily comes to fruition. A person could put an immense amount of effort in one business deal and nothing came of it. And he thought that's the best business deal in the world. And it's going to yield him the best results and nothing came of it. And something else that he barely put any effort in, or she put barely effort in, was successful. And if you look and you ponder, you will see the divine hand, how it is a divine hand that is behind all of this. So therefore, what's my obligation? The Torah obliges me to go and work, to earn a living, and to sustain my family. Yet the Torah also obliges me, only the most external of my being should be invested in my earning my livelihood, because my livelihood doesn't come about through me. I just create the vessel for the divine blessing to come. But the divine blessing is channeled from God. So what is then my objective? My objective, more than the effort in earning the livelihood, is that the effort and the toil emotionally and intellectually to understand that it comes from God and to recognize that it comes from God. And that is harder than going out to work and putting in an extra effort and more hours of work. That's harder, believe me. It's harder to come to a concrete faith, an absolute faith in God, that everything comes from God absolutely and totally, and that permeates every fiber of my being without being anxious and without being overly worried. And that's harder. It's easy for me to get up in the morning, go to work, try and pull a deal together, meet this one, speak to this one, and it's more fun too. It's no fun doing battle with your weaknesses and with your insecurities, because you want to feel that you're doing something about it, that your destiny is in your hands, in your control. It's not. Our job is to be able to await and anticipate God's divine kindness. That's a hard job. That's harder than going to work. To pray in the morning with diligence and with sincerity. To study with sincerity and with diligence. That's hard work. That is very hard work. To come to a recognition and a realization that God runs the world, absolutely every minute detail, and what is coming to you is coming to you, what's not is not. That's hard work. And to believe it totally, it's hard work. But that's our true work. People err and think our true work is going to work and putting in all of the effort. You don't need to put in the immense amount of effort. You need to do what you need to do. But you don't need to sacrifice your life. You don't need to sacrifice the benefit of your spouse and your children. You don't need to sacrifice your spiritual pursuits, your time for prayer, your time for study, because that goes contrary to the Torah. For if you believe that the Almighty created the Torah, and as our sages said, "Istakel b'oraita bara alma," that the Almighty, so to speak, created the world upon the blueprints, like an architect. He looks at blueprints, and the builder builds in according to those blueprints. That the Almighty created the world in accordance with the blueprints of Torah, then we have to follow the blueprints of Torah, the principles of Torah. And the Torah tells us that our objective in coming down to this world is to elevate ourselves and to elevate the whole world. And part of that is earning a living, because we are obligated to interact into the physical world. But nowhere does it say to become extremely wealthy. Leisure and pleasure, nowhere does it say. Uplift the world. Nowhere does it say that you have to sacrifice all of Torah, for which your whole soul came down to this world, to earn that living which is secondary. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. The Torah starts with the letter Bet, Bereshit. And the Hachamim tell us, why does the Torah start with the letter Bet? It should start with the letter Aleph. It's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph has great Kabbalistic meaning to it. Aleph also is the composite of three letters, is made up of three letters. The shape of the letters of Yud on the top, Yud on the bottom, and Vav in the middle, which is a numerical value of 10 and 10 and 6, which is 26, which is a numerical value of God's name. Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. So the letter Aleph is a very significant letter. Why did the Torah start with the letter Bet and not with the letter Aleph? Telling us that the whole creation is secondary. It's secondary to what? To the Aleph. And what is the Aleph? Where is the Aleph found? In the Ten Commandments, in the Torah. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God, who has taken you out of Egypt. Egypt refers to the concept of Metzarim, of limitations. It is the Torah that allows us to free ourselves from the limitations of this world. Because as I said many times, the danger of coming to this world is that we become too entrenched in the physical world, in the material world, too involved, overly eager. Even when we earn a living, we get so caught up in it that we forget the main. We forget the primary, we forget the real reason why we came down to this world. I'm here, I'm working, I want to become wealthy, I want to be this, I want more, I want this, I want to buy that, I want to make this happen, deal this happen, this deal, that deal. No one's saying no, but don't forget the main thing. And the main thing is that everything comes from God. And the main thing is to work with my mind or with my heart. That they will be in sync, and that I recognize that everything comes from Hashem, and that I will anticipate that whatever efforts that I put in will be crowned by Hashem's glory and by Hashem's benevolence and kindness. That is very hard work. You put in effort to pray with full concentration and with absolute belief in God. How many times do you pray to Hashem with an absolute and total sincerity that you are so confident that Hashem has, so to speak, heard your prayers? You know in your mind that Hashem hears your prayers. You know this. But how many times do you know it's so real that you know it from the depth of your being, of your soul? That takes effort and toil. That doesn't happen, at least to me, it doesn't happen all the time. When I pray, I try to put in effort, and I try to think and ponder about these things, etc., and reach a level of as much sincerity as I can. But there are times that it's almost like the window of heavens is opened. And that you know that prayer, and sometimes it comes in a very informal way, not in the context of prayer. You can be laying on your bed, you can be sitting in your office, and all of a sudden you just turn to Hashem for something, and that you just turn to Hashem with the inner recess of your heart, and you know that in that holy chamber of prayer that you've just said, it's just you and God. And there's no distractions whatsoever, and there's no doubt whatsoever, nothing gnawing at you. There's no concealment there. That's hard work. That's harder than going to work. Believe me, it's harder than going to work. But this is our job. This is the achievement. So you went to work and you pulled off a great deal and you made 100,000%, whatever profit. $100,000 profit, or 100, 200, 300% profit. Lovely. Hazaka Baruch. Congratulations. Mabruk, like we say in Yiddish. But did you really achieve what your soul came down to this world for? What do you mean? I'm going to give at least 10 to 20% charity of what I earned. But that's what the halakha says. You're not doing anything extraordinary. But is that what your neshama came down to this world for? Your neshama came down to this world to recognize the hand of God in everything that you do, in everywhere that you go. And to build an intimate relationship with Hashem. This is your job, and that's hard work. So I congratulate you, Hazaku Baruch, for going and doing and pulling off this deal, but you did nothing. Hashem decided. Hashem made it happen. You just made the vessel. That's all you need to do. You just have to be there. You have to sign on the dotted line. Hashem did all the work. But there's one thing that Hashem says that is up to you. This is the true work. This is to create an intimate relationship with Hashem. To know Him. To feel Him. To see Him. When you pray, it's praying. You know you're hearing the outpouring of your heart. And He hears, and you know He hears you. You know it. Not in your mind, not theoretically. You know it. That is hard work. And that's why the neshama came down to the world. And that's why it says, Kol hamarich be'ehad. We have to elongate, extend the ehad. What does it mean, the ehad? The awareness of God's oneness. That everything is included in God's oneness. This is what we have to do. And that's the work. A person is obligated only to make a vessel. And God's blessing will enter that vessel. And God is not limited to how big your vessel is. You don't need such a big vessel. You just need to make a minimum vessel. Almost just for the facade, almost just for the show. Of course, Kabbalistically speaking, our involvement in the physical world is a purpose to it. To uplift everything that we interact with. Do it in a kosher way. Express our... When you go and earn a livelihood and you have an absolute faith in Hashem, and you recall Hashem and you think of Hashem regularly, you have uplifted everything that you're involved with. That's why you go to work. What, Hashem could not have given you the man? Hashem could not have given you the man? The people in the desert didn't want to leave the desert. They wanted the man. They didn't want to go to Israel. They didn't want to work hard. Not because they didn't want to work hard. Maybe some. Because it's hard work to go to work and remember that God's blessing is what made you wealthy. That's hard work. Because we forget it so easily. It's hard work to say, I'm not going to rush. I have a meeting now. I have a meeting, so I'm not going to rush for my prayers. I'm not going to think about that meeting in my prayers. It's ticking. What am I going to say? How am I going to pull it off? How am I going to convince him? How am I going to? What percentage should I? That's hard work. That's hard work. This is the work. So when you come into work with the proper attitude, you've elevated your whole workplace, whatever it is that you're involved with. That's A. And B, the other objective is not to get carried away and to remember the hand of God and to remember the blessing of God. That's crucial to our spiritual health, spiritual development. We go to so much effort to make sure to improve and maintain our physical health, yet we do minimal to maintain our spiritual health. And it is an neshama that exists forever. The body exists for 120 years. That's what's allocated to us, no more. The soul exists forever. So for the body, we expend an unbelievable amount of money to feed it, to groom it, to dress it. And we want to make sure when we're dressing it, we got to make sure that it's going to have a, how do you say mutag in English? Mutag. Mutag is a brand name. Thank you. It's got to have a brand name. But the other suit, the suit looks very nice and it costs a fraction of the price. Go brand name. Who looks at the brand name? You make sure from time to time you flip your coat so people see the brand name. Otherwise, they won't know. How do you know? You got to flip it. What for? What for? And then you got to exercise. You got to go to the gym, and you spend an hour in the gym, and you got to pay membership. How much is membership in the gym? $50, $100, $200 a month. So much to groom and care and maintain this machine that we have. But the neshama that is the ikar, the neshama that is the primary, how much do we invest? Because that's what we came for. And that's kol ha'marich be'ehad. We got to be mindful of the ehad, the unity of God in everything that we do. Everything that we do, the unity of God has to be present there in that idea, in that thought. If not during, because we have to focus and concentrate what we're doing, at least before and after. And if you can do a little bit here and there in the middle, take a little breather and think about Hashem in the middle, then all the better. And when a person is mindful of that it is God's blessing that enriches us, then you won't be so quick to make sure to run out of the prayers so quickly and leave early. Or the shiur. You make sure that you go to a shiur. You make sure you pray with the minyan. You make sure you don't chop in the words in your prayer. You make sure that you're not thinking about all of the different thoughts that enter your mind. Because you are absolutely aware that it is God's blessing that enriches us. There was one time a rabbi who was running an organization, and someone made a meeting for him with a very wealthy philanthropist. And he was waiting to seek a donation to support this organization, a charitable organization. And he was waiting, and the philanthropist meeting extended, took longer, and the rabbi in the meantime was waiting, and time was going. And finally he let him in, and as he let him in, the rabbi looked at his watch and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's almost sunset, I'm going to have to pray mincha. I have to pray the afternoon prayer." He said, "But you waited so long for this meeting, I'm not going to be able to make another time." He says, "I have to pray." And the rabbi pulled aside and started to pray mincha nicely. He didn't make his mincha shorter than what he usually does. Because he's got to pray to Hashem. Because this is a primary. How and which channel God chooses to bring his blessing is up to him. It's not my business. I don't care. I don't care if it's this guy. I don't care if it's that guy. I don't care. I just got to do what I got to do. I've not invested my soul into this person thinking that he holds the key to the success of my organization, or all of those people who are getting their food from the charity fund or whatever they go, or the yeshiva to run to pay for the teachers. I don't care who Hashem teaches. I care about one thing, that I have to do what Hashem's commanded me to do. And I have to do a vessel. If God chooses that he's a vessel, fine. Good luck to him. He merited. So he prayed mincha. The philanthropist was so impressed with the sincerity of this rabbi that he was willing to forego this meeting that he waited months for in order to pray to Hashem. He said, that's the type of organization I want to support. And when he finished praying, the rabbi apologized for taking up his time, and the rabbi said, no, I'm very, no need for the meeting. It's okay, I'm going to support and what's his name? And support your organization. I know of a great rabbi who went with another great rabbi. Two great rabbis went to solicit from a wealthy benefactor a donation for the yeshiva. This great rabbi was not only a scholar, but he sat 20 years in Siberia in jail for spreading Judaism in Russia. Imagine. Who would survive? Who would survive that? Harsh, Siberia. Anyway, so this is a true story. You'd think crazy, but it's a true story. So someone made an appointment with a philanthropist, and the two rabbis sat down, in the couch in the waiting room, and the rabbi was elderly and he fell asleep. The philanthropist came out to meet his next appointment, and he sees this rabbi falling asleep like this. Fell asleep. And he felt sorry for him, this elderly rabbi coming and having to schlep, to the city to go and collect money for his organization. He wrote him a beautiful, healthy check. And he left it there for them. Anyway, when the rabbi woke up, the younger colleague gave him the check. And he said, "Oh, very nice." And the younger rabbi told him, "No, where are we going to go and fall asleep tomorrow?" You don't need to do much. You just have to be sincere. You have to be true to what Hashem wants of you. And you fall asleep on the couch and Hashem does His work. You just have to do what you have to do. But unfortunately, we put in more effort in the other because we're afraid. We're more conscious of the physical dynamics than the spiritual dynamics. What's going to be? How should I say? What should I do? I'll tell you another interesting story. There was a philanthropist who used to donate generously, and there were two heads of a yeshiva that would, amongst many, that would come and visit this philanthropist. And to one he would give extremely generous, and the other one he gave less, generous but less. And the second one, who knew that he gave less, he was wondering, why does he give me less? I also have a good yeshiva, also the students are good, and what's the difference? So he asked him, at the end of the meeting, he says, "Can I ask you, why is it that this Rosh Yeshiva, you give him so much more and me you give less? Why is my institution any less than his?" And he says, "No, God forbid. God forbid." He says the attitude is totally different. When he comes in, he makes me understand how powerful and important Torah is and how garbage money is. Money is worthless. Money is garbage. It's nothing. Unfortunately, you got to use this garbage like you need to use toilet paper for your needs. You got to use this garbage in order to, that's how the world works. And it makes me understand that money is nothing. And when I understand money is nothing, I freely give it away. By nature, I'm not a generous person. I have to work on myself because God commanded me to give tzedakah. I have to work on myself to give tzedakah. I'm not naturally generous. But when He makes me feel that money is absolutely nothing and Torah is the greatest of value and money is garbage, so it's nothing for me to give it away. But when you come, when you ring the bell, you fix your tie, just make sure you're presentable, and you honor me. The other rabbi doesn't honor me at all. And you come and you give me all of the honor. Why do you honor me? Because I'm wealthy. So you remind me how important money is. And since I'm by nature not very generous, and you remind me how important money is, I want to hang on to it and keep as much of it as possible. So I give you a donation because it's the right thing to do. And I want to, but I give you less. You see the approach. Our approach is hard work. It's harder than going to work. It's easy to go to work. It's easy to go to work. It's harder to work on your emunah. It's harder to work on your faith. It's harder to work on the oneness of God and recognizing the oneness of God, no matter what the outcome is, that it comes from God. That's hard work. And this is what we have. This is our objective. This is our goal. Yes, we said you have to go to work because of all of the reasons that you need to go to work. You got to make a vessel, but just the vessel. The blessing comes from Hashem. Let us never forget that. For if we forget that, we have lost focus of our whole objective in the first place. Would anybody go to work? Anybody go to work if they knew in advance they're not going to earn anything from it? If you knew at the end of the week you're not going to get a wage from this thing, he's having you on. He's using you. Would you go to work? Of course you wouldn't go to work. You got to go to work because God willed it. And you got to go to work because you got work to do, spiritual work to do. And if you're going to work and you're not achieving what you need to achieve spiritually, then you wasted the whole week of going to work. Because it's just not, you're not going to work just to earn a living. Because if God just wanted you to earn a living, He would have given you the manna from heaven. And that's what we said before, that the generation of the desert, they didn't want to enter the land of Israel. Why didn't they want to enter the land of Israel? Because there is a danger. In the desert, you don't have to work. God gave you the man, and you had Moshe Rabbeinu teaching you, and you were very spiritual. All of a sudden, you're going to go to the land of Israel, and you're going to work, and you're going to earn good money, and you're going to become wealthy. And there's a danger in becoming wealthy. You think you can err and think, it is my prowess, I'm brilliant, I'm talented. That's what made all the blessings. And you begin to forget Hashem. And you begin to become indulgent and overly passionate about the physical world. And you forget what you're there for. They were afraid of that. They were very frightened of that. Let us stay. Let us forgo everything, all of the blessings that Israel has, but not go through the danger. And we know it's a danger. What does the Torah say? Shamanta avita kasita. You've grown, you've waxed wealthy and fat, and you've booted God, so to speak, out of your life. It's a real threat, a real danger when a person becomes wealthy. It's a problem. It's a real danger. That's why we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, in the morning and in the night, to proclaim the oneness of God, to engrave upon us absolute faith of God's oneness. And thus when we go to work, we understand that we got a job to do, not only a physical job. More than the physical job, we got tikkunim to make. We got rectifications to do. We got sparks to uplift. This is just a ruse. This is just a guise. It's just a facade going to work. Because God could have given me the man right outside my door. It's there to test you. It's there to, when you pass the test, you will then release the sparks that are embedded in the physical world that you're interacting with. It is to see and to bolster your emunah. If you don't flex your muscles, you will never exercise, you will never strengthen your muscles. How are you going to strengthen your spiritual muscles if you don't go to the darkness? If you don't go to work? How are you going to see your true emunah? What do you think the rabbi who sits all day and studies, is he truly expressing his emunah like the guy that works? The guy that works is expressing his emunah in God even more than the guy who studies all day. He sees the divine providence if he wants to, greater. But he can also fall in the abyss, greater. The Gaon Mevilna, the great Gaon Mevilna, had a colleague by the name of the Maggid of Dubna. The Maggid of Dubna was a preacher. And he would reprimand, and he would say stories, and he would say Talmud and Midrashim and different things to strengthen and bolster the people, and reprimand. One time when he came to visit the Gaon of Vilna told him, why don't you give reprimand everyone, you try and help everyone, and you don't reprimand me? And he said, okay. He said, you think it's a trick? You think it's a trick to be the Gaon of Vilna and sit in your room all day, closeted from the world, of the temptations of the world and the darkness of the world, and study and learn? You think that's a trick? Why don't you go try and go earning a living and go out in the world and go and see? And the Gaon of Vilna smiled and said, I'm no trickster. I don't play tricks. I don't pull tricks. What does it mean? Because it's hard. It's hard. Yes, you see the divine providence more in the workplace. Yes, you bolster and strengthen your muscles of emunah, of faith in God, greater than the guy who's studying inside. But it's not easy. The Gaon of Vilna told him, I don't do tricks. I'm not willing to take the risk. The people in the desert didn't want to take the risk because it's a real risk. But the achievements are great. And that's our objective. This is why we say Shema Yisrael in the morning, Shema Yisrael in the evening. Shema Yisrael when things are going good. The day is a symbolism of things going good. The night is a symbolism of darkness when things are going not so good. There's doubt, there's confusion. I don't know what's going on. Is God with me? Is God listening to my prayers? Things are not going so good. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Here is the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. The same one is the way when He shines His blessings in a revealed way to you is the same one that the blessings are not so evident. There, the oneness of God is just as equal, just as strong, just as powerful. The purpose and God's love to you is just as equal in times of clarity and times of divine grace, the same. So we say the Shema both in the evening and in the morning, both at night and both at day. We'll stop over here and we'll continue by the grace of God next week. Does anybody have any questions?